Okay, well then, I am going to go live on Instagram for shits and giggles. I don't know how well this is going to work. I don't know what I'm fucking doing. I'm going to get kicked off of YouTube and Instagram because I am definitely going to show something on accident because of using generative AI imagery. uh, but here's hoping that what I'm doing is going to be useful to anybody at some point. So, Comfyui, if you've never heard of it before, and I'm recording this, so it'll be available later in case somebody shows up. Comfyui is an interface for making generative AI images, and it is not simple to learn how to use, but it is easy to use once you know how to do it. So it is hard to learn, but easy to use. And essentially what you do is you go to Comfyui's GitHub. So you go to GitHub Comfyui, and you probably go to, where is it? Right here. And you'll have lots of instructions and all this kind of stuff. Basically, you want this direct download. You download it, you install it, and then generally speaking, the way that works is that there will be a lot of things that you need to install as well. But you don't need to install anything else except for a couple of things. One of the things that you will absolutely need is checkpoints. Checkpoints are things. Are they going to explain that here? Do they explain that here? Do they explain that here? Oh, I should have looked before I started this. I should have looked before I started this, but I didn't. Oh well. If you look on Comfyui's page, they will probably somewhere in here explain this, but essentially what you need, LCM morals, they have models, they have upscale models. Okay, so they have a bunch of links in here that for all the kinds of stuff that you need. You will need some sort of models or checkpoints. You will need something like that. I'm not going to go into that right now. I don't want to actually explain how to install this. I want to explain how to use it because I think once you know how to use it, it's worth figuring out how to install it on your own. And the installing it is not actually the hard part. One thing, there is another thing that's worth getting, which is Comfyui Manager. If you go just on the internet and you search for a Comfyui Manager, you will find this thing. This thing is installed in the same place that all other plugins are installed, and they explain it to you right here, CD into custom nodes. At this point, almost everything in here uses Git, so you'll have to have Git installed. Again, I'm not talking too much about explanation about how to install things. I just want to briefly cover it. But inside of here, you can see that you'll just git clone this page and then restart Comfyui. The way Comfyui works is that they'll have a terminal running the entire time, and whenever you need to restart it, you just literally need to close it and reopen it. That's the way that works. Okay. With Comfyui Manager, what you can do is install missing nodes or any other custom nodes that you don't have. That makes it very easy to get around. And then you can also update all of your nodes, which you should probably do every day. But that allows you to update all your stuff. So you download this, you install it, you hopefully have Git running. You probably need Python running. And then at that point, you need to probably install this. It explains how to install it. Again, I'm not talking too much about that. I just want to kind of go over it. All right. Oh my God, why is that so loud? Okay. So here we go. Comfyui. Comfyui is an interface for making generative AI images using stable diffusion. How does this work? Let's go over it. First things first. Two ways to work with this interface. One, right-click on the grid and you can do a bunch of things, or double-click on the grid and you can search for things to do. When you right-click, you'll have a list of all of the plugins that you have installed and all of the nodes that they have installed. That can be really good when you know what you're doing, and it can be really confusing when you don't. So I'm going to show you how to do it without starting with that. First things first, we're going to get a loader. And what we essentially want is a checkpoint loader. And when you search in here, it will it won't do fuzzy search. It will do very linear search. So you can't even you can't even put spaces where they aren't supposed to be. You have to have it very specifically typed out. So I'm going to search for loader, and I'm going to get this checkpoint loader simple. This checkpoint loader simple is what's going to allow me to load in a stable diffusion model. A stable diffusion model is what allows us to generate images according to somebody's iteration of the original of an original stability AI stable diffusion model. So what I can do from that is I could right click and add more nodes, or double click and add more nodes, or I can drag out a thread from here and add new nodes that way. And I'm going to do that a lot because sometimes what that will do is it will only give you nodes that are relevant to that thread. So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick a model. I have a number of models that I've already downloaded and installed. I've actually even got ones that I've made, but for right now I'm going to choose something very simple, like realistic vision, which is a very easy, not offensive checkpoint. From there, I'm going to drag out my clip. With the clip, I can do a clip text encode, and basically what you need is two of these. With your clip text encode, what you have is a positive and negative prompt. Now, the negative prompt isn't nearly as useful as a lot of people think it is, but the positive prompt is pretty important. And from here, what we can do is we can drag out our model, and we can do a K-sampler. And a K-sampler, there was a K-sampler advanced too. There was a bunch of other ones, but like this just has a couple of other like options that I don't always find useful. From here, we can take this first conditioning and the second conditioning, and we can say that this is our positive prompt and this is our negative prompt, and then we need a latent image. And with our latent image, basically we can do a empty latent image, and the empty latent image is going to be your size of the image that you want to generate and how many of the images you want to generate at any one time. Okay, so we've got our model, we've got our prompt. This model probably already comes with its own VAE encoder. This is how you encode the concept of images into actual images. And from there, what we can do is we can pull out a latent, and we can say that we want to VAE decode and drag our VAE into that. And then we can also say that we want to image preview image. And from there, what we can say is a house in the forest. And there's a Q prompt button over here, but you can also just control enter, and it will try to load in your model, and then it will try to generate your prompt. Let's see what it does. Woo! Look at that. With that, we can now see that this was you can actually only preview it as big as it is, which is actually kind of cool. Because then you know that if you want to zoom into it, you can just zoom in with the interface. Okay, it has made a house in the forest. Now, what this is doing is every time this seed generates an image, it always randomizes and generates a new seed. So if I do this again, it will generate a different image based on a different seed. If I fix this so that it's always that seed, it never actually will generate a different image at this point. It's always generating it off of that same seed, and so it doesn't generate anything new. There's nothing new to see, so it's just generating that. Okay, now, there's a bunch of other stuff in here that you can change. Sometimes I like to have a lower CFG, which is how much of your clip is actually being thought about by the renderer. If you make it a very high clip, it tries to be very specific to your prompt. If you make it a very low clip, it starts to get very wild and like not necessarily like your prompt. There's a lot of fiddling that you can do. Well, by the way, I'm just clicking and dragging on here. You can also tap to increase the numbers, or you can click to type in a number, but you can also just drag on these. They're sliders. So then we have steps here, and steps, if we reduce this down to one step, you can see that it doesn't have enough time to like figure out what it is. Like if you watch this, those are the steps. When it goes blah 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 blah, it's trying to figure out the image that it wants to make. And so you can see here, even at this very low step of 8, it's actually generating an image, which is pretty nice. Look at that. Now, this image is not high quality. If I improve this up to, like, let's say this 20 right here, then we do get a better quality image. There is more detail, there's more information, there's all kinds of stuff like this. We can even say man with axe, and now there should... Well, no, that didn't give us a man with axe at all. Man with axe? Man with axe? Well, it doesn't want to give us a man with axe. Can we prompt that up? Can you give me man with axe? Hey, there's my... Oh. Terrifying. Okay. Okay. This is the basic setup of Stable Diffusion and Comfyui. The way this works is that you've got your checkpoint, which is the model that knows how to generate images. And if I wanted a different kind of model, I could choose a different checkpoint here. Like if I wanted something that was more cartoony, I could load in this Real Cartoon 3D, and probably this will not... I'll bet this will be even more focused on the man with axe. Nope, it's not. But it is a little bit more cartoony. You can see that this has less grainy texture and is more like a model from a game or something like that. And I'm going to actually randomize this for now. Every time I generate, that'll be easier. Yeah, there we go. And you can see that this looks more cartoony than the other model because this model is specific for that. Now, that's the basics. That's the basics of this. You're off to the races. If you right-click this, you can save this image to wherever you want. But we can do so much more with Comfyui, with this interface. We can do so much more to add intrigue or change the way we work or anything like that. For instance, one of the things that is brand new in Comfyui, or in Stable Diffusion, is the idea of LCM. LCM allows us to have a very small amount of steps, but still a very good image. You remember that when I reduced these steps down to like 5 or 4, the image was not... It didn't have enough time to figure itself out, and so it didn't do anything good. What I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce a LoRa. I'm going to pull this model out, and I'm going to say LoRa loader, and I'm going to load in the LCM LoRa 1.5. And then I'm going to use that as my model chain now. This LoRa is now in the middle. LoRa's are... Oh, what does LoRa stand for? Oh my god, I forget. LoRa stands for... Oh my god. LoRa stands for Low Rank Adaptation Model. It is a model that doesn't generate images, but alters other models and how they generate images. That's what a LoRa is. There are lots of LoRas that are very specific. So, for instance, they add smiles, or they change faces to be specific faces, or they change styles of art or something like that. But this LoRa introduces a concept called LCM. LCM is latent consistency model, and it basically allows a model to take a very few amount of steps and a very low CFG, and then generate an image that is still okay. I need a clip. Okay, now that I'm gonna make this clip come off of here. Yeah. Okay. That is generating an image that is not as bad as the other one, but not as good as what someone who's been using this tool for a while might expect. But it was fast. It was so fast. 4 steps is incredibly fast. And in fact, one of the things you can do in Comfyui is you can say auto queue, and this will basically generate images very, very, very fast. To the point where, okay, 1 is not that good, but okay, 3 is not terrible. And in terms of generating images, look at that. It's boom, boom, boom. Now, one of the worries and concerns about AI generative images is that they are copying other artists. And this is a tough topic. As a creator, as an artist, I feel it is important that I talk out on this subject. The technology does not copy artists. Certain individuals use the technology to try to copy artists. And that is not what the technology does. The technology is trained on an image in such a way that what it does is it takes an image, whether it's a stylistic image or a photograph or anything like that, and it says, somebody says, some part of this is a rabbit. And if you give it 15 different images of rabbits, it starts to figure out what a rabbit looks like. And the way it does that is that it starts to start with an image that has only noise, just random noise, random pixels, and then it tries to, every couple of steps, convert that into what you just described. So if it has 15 different pictures of rabbits in all different like angles and all that kind of stuff, and you say make rabbit, it's going to take some noise, and every few steps it's going to try to make that noise more and more like a concept it has of rabbits. But it will never copy any of those parts directly. It will always, because what it's always working off of is the pixels it had before. So as it steps forward, it's always trying to interpret these pixels based on what it knows rabbits are, but it's not trying to make any one of those rabbits. It is smart enough in its AI to always be trying to make a rabbit, not make one of those rabbits. It's trying to make a rabbit from this noise. And because it has enough information, it can then try to generate something that is randomized and different. So if I come over here and I say a rabbit in a car, then we've got rabbits in cars, and it's being generated, and sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad. Sometimes the car is good, sometimes the car is bad. Sometimes the rabbit had one ear. But it's still trying to generate it, and it's still trying its best to make what it thinks a rabbit is. Oh, there we go. And none of these are an image it was fed, but all of them, I mean, it was clearly fed certain kinds of cars, and then it tries to make something that is like a car, sometimes merging different car parts into each other. But I guarantee you, none of those cars that it is drawing here are from any one photograph. Because I guarantee you no one photograph was that exact angle, that exact style, that exact placement, that exact image. It's generating something else. And so even if it learned on something that it shouldn't have learned on, what it makes is no different than a human being copying another artist's style. And that is a controversial statement because we don't necessarily like when artists do that either. But we all do at a certain point. All of us artists, at a certain point, learn from someone else's art. One of the things you can do with generative AI is merge different models together to make something other than was expected. There's some interesting things you can do. For instance, if I take this model, Laura, right here, and I take this model and I do a merge simple on this model, and I pull in another model that is something else. I'm going to do this is the cartoon one. I'm going to do Juggernaut. And if I take these two models and I merge them into one model at a 50% ratio so that it's half one model and half another model, when this starts to make an image, it's going to be wholly different than anything either one of those trained models was able to make. It will be something new. It will be something different. It is not making the same cars anymore. It's not making the same rabbits anymore. It's making something different, and it's in some ways worse, but it's not the same anymore. It's different. It's new. And this is the thing that I think a lot of people get stuck on, is they're like, well, it stole people's art. And it's like, I'm not going to deny that that's a possibility. I think that's a very real take, that your art was stolen. But it is no more real than saying that this artist draws like that artist, but also makes their own art. if someone like if an artist draws like another artist because they originally learned by copying that person's art, but now they make new art in that same style, are they stealing that other artist's art? No, and this is a complicated subject, and I think it's worth talking about. I think it's worth thinking about. That this is not a simple subject to talk about, and the more I get into it, the more excited I get about the possibility of it being better than I originally thought it was, because I originally thought that it was just pasting pieces of another image, but the more I've used it, that is not what's happening. It's not at all what's happening. It's something very unique and different, and there are ways to use it that you can copy and paste, but that's not what it does. That's what you can do with it. And so I think that's worth having a conversation about. So we can merge different models together to get a unique, interesting result. For instance, I could take a more complex thing like this, which is a hard outline one that I've merged myself, and this will start to create more cartoon-like images. And then if we move this back over to realistic vision, then we'll get the realistic vision, but with some more cartoony, like it starts to be a little bit more cartoony. And if we make it so that the realistic vision is less, then the realistic vision is now affecting the realism of the cartoony style of the sugar donut style. And so now we're getting something else, something different. And this is the other thing where when you talk about like it's just copying the image, and it's like no one fed a picture of a car on a beach into Stable Diffusion. That didn't happen. This is new. This is different. It's a different thing. I doubt there was a rabbit on a car either. So the idea that it's just stealing it's not the correct take. I don't know what's right. I know that's not right. I know that's not right. And so that's where that works. Okay, so now we're generating images. I am right now just goofing off and making images that don't really mean anything and aren't very good. But let's try and make something that is possibly good. Right now we're doing our Laura, and we're doing only 3 steps. I'm going to boost this back up to 8. I find 8 to be a really good number of steps to get an image that's okay. This is a pretty okay image. Will it have problems? Sure. But can I get a good image out of it? Yes. If I step through enough randomization, I can oftentimes get an image that is in fact good. Now that's not a bad starting point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fix that starting point right there. Oh, did I? Oh, okay. Okay, there we go. I'm going to fix it on this right here. We're going to keep this for a little while. I want to show you some other things that you can do with this that are interesting. One of the things you can do with it is you can pull information out of this image. This is stuff that you could do in Photoshop, sure, but the way that you can pull it out and feed it back into itself is very, very intriguing. Let's take this image and let's pull this out and let's search for a preprocessor, and let's do something like a line art preprocessor. And when we pull this out and do a preview image on this, if we queue this prompt up, we're going to use the exact same image and we're going to create line art of that image. Is it great line art? Not necessarily. I'm also going to pull this out and invert it and then pull that into here so that when we look at it, it is like this. Hey, look at that. That looks like a drawing of this car, of this thing. If I switch it to a new image, we'll get a new line art. And this line art, whereas this is an image that was generated and it's okay quality. Oh, hey, Angel. This is an image that is going to be good based on the goodness of this image. So the goodness of this image is wholly dependent on the goodness of this image. But what are some other things that we can pull out? Let's search for a depth map. Let's get a Midas depth map, and let's pull that preview out here. And now what we get is a depth map, which is interesting. Let's pull out another one, and let's search for what do I want? I want a normal map. And with this normal map, I'm going to preview the image, and then we are going to get something like this. Now, if you've ever done anything with 3D, you know that depth maps and normal maps are things that are super important to 3D. They are the thing that when you generate an image, sometimes you have to like do all these extra steps to generate normal maps and depth maps, and you can just sort of pop those out from any image that you make from here. Let's do a rocky texture repeating. Okay, now I don't think that's going to repeat, but what it has done is it's created an image here that is of like a rocky texture, and then it's given us both the depth map and the normal map and a fucking drawing of it of that thing. Angel, I'm using Comfyui. This is a software for generating generative images and using AI. And so this is one of those things where, like, when I first saw this, it clicked inside of me of how much faster the step could be for making video games. If I trained this well enough, and there are actually, aren't there? Repeat. I think there's texture repeating, image seamless texture. I don't know what this is going to do. Let's find out what this does. I've never actually used this. Ooh, what has it done? Okay, it's made something that is absolutely terrible. But something that is, in fact, a seamless tile. So if you were to have 4 of these in a row, in fact, I think they're even showing it as a seamless tile. I think they're actually showing it as a seam of 4. This is now a seamless image. Is it good? No, it's absolutely terrible. All right, that's better. Maybe I need a better image. Is that going to do better? That already does a lot better. There's like a little bit of a seam right here, but that's not terrible. And as you can see, this is repeating, and now this is a repeatable tile. And what that means is I'm going to do something right now. I'm going to take this image, and I am going to reroute it so that sometimes I can reroute from this image, but sometimes I can reroute from another image. And then I'm going to pump this image into these 3 right here. And now when I do this, all right, now what we have is our texture that is a repeating texture. As far as we know, I believe that's a repeating texture. It's interesting that this depth map has tried to add depth to this image that is not actually there. That's goofy. But the normal map has not. The normal map is fine. But this is actually something where I think the future of video games is going to be using these latent consistency models to create unique textures on the fly that have all of the information built into them, but they are completely unique every single time. And this is where stuff is going to be, start changing in next year. Honestly, next year. Next year, this is going to absolutely blow up. If you have never paid attention to this before, the last month of Stable Diffusion has been bonkers. And it is just absolutely exploding with new technology and advances and all kinds of stuff, and it is very, very, very cool. And I cannot wait for... Oh, that's a terrible one. Can I get a better one? That's terrible, too. Let me say not repeating. Let me say seamless here and see if that helps. I don't know that that helped. That didn't really help. And that's creating terrible tiles now. That's all right, though. Oh, I can see more tiles with this. Look at that. Oh, I get it now. I get it now. Okay, cool. Tiled, true, yes. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. So, this is one of those things where Comfyui is more interesting than a lot of the other technologies out there for generating images. One, because it starts with nothing, although you do have this load default that does start you with something. But it's very, you have to learn how to use it, and it has a learning curve. Whereas a lot of other ones are like, here's a button, click it, and it works. And then you can maybe tweak something, but everything's right there, and you just tweak it. Here you have to bring it in. You have to know where it is. It's like the difference between having everything out on a countertop to cook with and having everything in cupboards to cook with. Like, you still have to go find it and know where it is or anything like that. This is the cupboards. This is everything put away, and then you can pull it out when you need it. But what you can do with it then is anything. Whereas if everything's out on counters and that's all your counter space is taken up and there's no more manipulation that you can do, that's bad. But if everything's in cupboards and then you pull it out and you put it wherever it needs to be and then you put it away and everything like that, that's more like Comfyui. That's the analogy. And so this is technology that allows you to do whatever you want if you're willing to work on the learning curve and do something with it. Now, I want to show you something that I've been working on to try and do something interesting with this. Let's make a one woman sweater, pants, shops, street, no, pedestrians. Let's look at that. I'm gonna actually delete this seamless stuff because I don't think we need that right now. That did not reroute this, so I'm gonna reroute this. And I'm going to queue prompt. Okay, so we've got one woman shopping, and we have gotten this off of this. Okay, so this normal map is less interesting to me now. I'm going to delete that. This depth map is still very interesting to me, and this drawing is actually still very interesting to me. Now, you can see here that this image is okay. It's not great, but it's... I mean, I guess we could move more steps and we could try to get something a little bit better, but even then, it's still the same seed, and so when you try to get something better, you're not getting anything much better. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to upscale this. When we upscale an image, what we can do is we can pull this out, and there's a lot of options here, but I'm actually going to have to go search for upscale, and I have something installed called Ultimate SD Upscale. Ultimate SD Upscale, you can see that most of the stuff I've had on here has not had an extra name. It's got this little fox. This little fox means it's native to Comfyui. This is something that comes from ControlNet, which is another plugin. This is something that came from something else that I don't exactly know. This is a new plugin called Ultimate SD Upscale. If you want to, again, just search for like Comfyui Ultimate SD Upscale. You'll get to the GitHub and then you'll be able to install it. Once you have the manager, you can actually search for nodes by saying install custom nodes, and then you can get a list, and then you can say not installed, and then say SD Upscale or something like that, and then you can find it. But what this is going to allow me to do is upscale my image. Now, I'm going to do something now that's we got this here. These are in the opposite direction. I am going to do a little bit of organization here. I am going to move these over I'm going to get myself a pipe to basic pipe. I'm going to grab my VAE. I'm going to grab my clip. I'm going to grab my model. I'm going to grab my positive and my negative. And I'm just going to have these here. And then I'm going to pipe that all over to here. Like this. And this is just going to allow me to have all of this stuff from over there over to here without having to have 4 lines or 5 lines. I like to keep my lines as simple as possible, and so sometimes the lines can get a little bit wonky. You can also change the way your lines look right here from straight, linear, or splines, which I believe is the default. You can change the way those lines look to whatever you sort of want to have. But now I have these piped over to here. And from here, what I can do is an ultimate SD upscale. Now, SD upscale wants an upscale model, and there are a number of different models. I have a few installed right here, and ultra sharp is the one that a lot of people kind of stick on. If you don't have any of these, just search for this term on the internet, and you'll probably find it. Be able to install it into your checkpoints under upscale in Comfyui. And I'm just going to pick one. It doesn't super matter. I'm going to upscale by 2. I'm going to, since this model is the LCM model, I'm going to actually switch this over to LCM with SGM uniform. I'm going to switch this down to like 8 again, but that's fine now because we're going to actually take a previous image and then upscale it to a better image. Now, in order to do that, I'm going to have to denoise that image, and I'm going to denoise it a little bit. The way denoise works is that normally this latent image starts with a bunch of noise, just pixels, and then the denoiser is going to change that noise into an image. But here, what we're wanting to do is instead of completely taking that noise and completely transforming it, I want to take what's there and only moderately transform it. I just want to transform it a little bit. I also want to take this positive prompt and I want to do a different one. I want to do something where the prompt says nothing. The reason I want it to say nothing is because I don't want this part to influence the image that I already have. What I want to do is I want to take this image and I want to upscale it bigger. So from there, I'm going to preview image. Prompt. This doesn't have negative. Whoops. All right. What this is doing, as you can see, is it's taking pieces of this image. It's looking through the pieces of the image. It's breaking the image down into smaller parts. It's looking at each of those, upscaling each of them, and then going on to the next piece and upscaling that. So that it doesn't have to have all of this in memory at once. This is one of the ways that it allows us to upscale images without having nearly as much RAM usage or VRAM usage. And now we have an image that looks a lot better. You can see that details are still part of the image, but the face is way better than it was. If it's different, that's because it's different. It got changed. This thing has changed that image. It has essentially kept the same location. Like there's a similar concept here. You can see this. The image wasn't really clear what the heck that was, and now it's kind of got a better idea of what it thinks it is. It kept certain things that were weird, like these 3 straps here don't necessarily make sense, but it kept them. And now we've got an image that is bigger, better, and we could, depending on your computer, I recently got a 3090 graphics card so that I could do more stuff with this. But if we pumped this up to 4 times, this would take longer, and these little things would be smaller. So this will take a lot longer, but you could see that image of that face was already a lot more detailed. I think if you were looking at it from my position, you can see that a lot of stuff is now, you can see it's changing things. Oh, it didn't do that hand well. Yeah, it really messed up that hand, but the face got, ooh. Okay, so one of the reasons that this probably happened is that maybe it wasn't even on that face. let's try to pull that down just a little bit more and do it again. This is random every time that it remakes. Oh, it's because, yeah, it was right in the center of the face. So one half of the face is one generation, and the other half of the face is the other generation. That's probably why that isn't working too super hot. Let's see here. That's better. I like that one a lot better. It has still made a lot more detail, and on my graphics card, it went relatively fast. But you can see that now what we're getting here is these things where it's trying to these are the tiles that this thing is tiling, and when they come together, it's like this one interpreted this part of the image this way, and this one interpreted this part of the image this way. So they didn't work the same way. I believe we could probably, I don't even think making the seed the same thing would help that. Basically, the thing that helps that is not going too big on one step. What we can then do is we can pull this down. We can grab this, and we can move it over here. And then we can take all of these same things. Positive, negative, VAE, same upscale model, but we're just going to do 2 again. So it's going to be the exact same type, just again. I'm going to try this out. Whoops. Let me just cancel that. We're going to try this again. Now, hopefully what this will do is it will make sure that this image generates okay, and that now we have a bunch more images that are like more uniform now when they go to the next step. Because before, it was very small, it had a lot to interpret. Now, it's already been interpreted once, and hopefully that means that the next interpretation won't have as much leeway with how it tries to interpret. Okay, so did we still get a couple of lines here? Yeah, we still got a couple of lines, but all in all, it's a lot better. And the thing is that there's things you can do to mess with that. But one of the things that I want to show you is that you can essentially set up multiple steps here. You can keep going. I could keep going now. I could make another one. And actually, oops. I'm going to take this, copy this, shift paste this, and then pull this image over to here. And now here, I'm going to pop this up to 4. So this is going to be quite large. And we're just going to let my computer try and generate this. Now, as I said, I have a 3090 now. A 3090 is okay. It's good. It was good last generation. It's still good this generation. It's not the best thing that exists, but it's very good. It has 24 gigabytes of VRAM, and that's kind of what this tool wants. It wants lots of VRAM so that it can place things into RAM as it's trying to remember what it did before. It wants to remember what it did before, and so if you don't let it remember what it did before, then it won't be as good. And so it's one of those things where, like, this thing really wants to be greedy, and if you don't let it be greedy, it just isn't as good. But what this is still doing is, ooh, it's still reading itself. This is going to be bad. I wonder how long this will take. I might stop it midway through. Oh, boy. This might be a terrible image for this anyways. Will we even see her head? I don't even think we'll see her head on... Oh, that's some high-quality hair right there. This was a terrible idea, but the point is that you can keep going and going and going and make it bigger and bigger, and I'll be honest with you, the image this is going to... Okay, how big was this? This was 512 by 512 times 2 times 2 times 4. What is that? 512 times 2 times 2 times 4. That's an 8,000. That's an 8K image. So this is generating an 8K image. There was a random eyeball in there. But it's generating whatever it can. Now, Stable Diffusion is different than... I'm going to move the... Hi, everybody. Can I move this? I don't think I can move this. That's a bad idea. I don't think I can move this too much. Can you see me? I can't see me. It doesn't matter. Let's put this back over here. You guys, Stable Diffusion works on a model you give it and the text you give it. And it is different than other generative image models, like, for instance, Midjourney. And the reason that it's different is because Midjourney has a lot of its own text manipulation and prompting that it does. And it has its own models that it uses. And it doesn't necessarily let you know what those are or manipulate them. Whereas I, as you can see, am able to manipulate my models. I was able to take my models and merge them together and make something interesting and new. Midjourney and other tools like that don't necessarily, like DALL-E, they don't let you have control over it like that. In a lot of ways, they are better in their simplicity, but they are limited in their scope. So they can do really amazing things with a very simple input, but they are very limited in your ability to control that input and output into something that is perhaps more useful to you, as opposed to just neato wowie zowie. Because right now, what I'm generating is something right in between useful and neato wowie zowie. Should I keep letting this go? I want to do something else. I don't want this to keep going. Oh, I'm going to stop it. Sorry, guy. Oh, well, that was fun. You could see it was being weird. It would have been absolutely bonkers. But this allows us to see it allows us to iterate on images very, very fast. One of the things I'm doing right now is just doing one image, and this is SD upscaling, and I'm gonna mute these for a second so that they don't do anything. And I'm gonna go back over here, and I'm going to batch size. When I batch size over here, this batch is going to create a bunch of images at once. Whoops. Somehow that got set to a ridiculous number. Let's do that again. All right. Now, when I batch size, you can see that I can iterate on a bunch of things kind of really fast. I can just see all of them, all of these different options at once, and this allows you to work off of one of these images to do something else that you might want to do. So, for instance, one of the things you can do is you can, in Stable Diffusion, in Comfyui, if I highlight this image right here and copy it, it's now copied by my clipboard. And if I paste, it will paste that image in whatever I just clipped. It will paste it into a load image, and it's now saved. Comfyui won't do anything to this image until I do something to this image. That's now saved there and over here in the interface. It's not saved. I think it's actually saved to a folder called pasted, but it's saved into the interface, and I can keep going and prompting, and this thing will continue to generate more images, but now this one was saved. And if I like one of these, what I can actually do is I can right-click it, and I can say copy clip space, and then I can paste that. Now, the previous thing that I pasted in with by copying an image and pasting it, that one saved to a folder. This one doesn't. It's actually a little goofy. It's just in memory, which means if I reload Comfyui, that won't be there anymore. That's just inside baseball if you're interested in that. But now I have this image saved here. What can I do with that? Well, a couple different things. One, I've made my own node that I actually really like to use, and it's called fit size, load image and resize to fit. And if I take this and I copy this clip space over to here, I get something very similar to this load image, but now what I have is I have an image that's saved that can now be output and copy and pasted into in a number of very interesting ways. And I want to start showing you what this looks like. Before, when we started using here, we were using an empty latent image. I'm going to move this over right now. I'm going to pull this in. I'm going to use this image as my latent image. Now, when I do this, nothing super big is going to change about my workflow at first. Because at first what I'm doing is I'm still denoising at a full 1. So 100% denoise. What I'm actually going to do now is I'm going to reduce this down to like 50. And what you're going to see now is that it makes something that is very similar to that original image. It's got almost the exact same layout, but if you actually look at it, it is in fact different. I'm going to move this over to here. I'm going to move this down to here. I am going to move this right here so we can see these two things next to each other. Okay, so what we can see here is that now, let's move this back to randomize. All right, so now when I generate, you can see that it's essentially generating off of this image, and it's generating something new, but always kind of based on that image. Now, if I reduce this denoise down to something less, then it will be even closer to this image, but still with differences. And if I increase this denoise, then it will be farther away, but still based on. So now it's farther away from that first image, but still based on it. Now let's do something weirder. Let's take a copy of this aspect ratio and paste it over in here. The way my node works is that it automatically resizes this to a maximum of 768 pixels. So that it's always something that fits with, no matter what I just copied and pasted, no matter what aspect ratio or anything like that, it always has a max size of 768 on the height or the width. And then I'm going to even tell it to upscale if it needs to. And then I'm going to do this again. And now I'm generating an image off of this aspect ratio. If I pull this back down to about 6.5, I'll get something that is based off of this image, but something new. And if I want to, I can even do something as ridiculous as just taking this. And now I'm generating a new image off of that image. That's interesting. Let's go further. Let's go a small little, like this is just a tiny little clip. It's terrible quality. But because I've got that to work with, now I'm generating something unique, but from that silhouette in essence. That silhouette is now creating the basis of my new image. And at that point, I can take my text prompt and I can like start manipulating this. I can say pink sweater. And now pink has started to go into the image, but it's trying its hardest, but the original image it had was very low, like it was very quiet. I'm gonna actually just do this, and I'm gonna make a clip that's includes these gray boxes actually on the sides. And when I generate it again, those gray boxes are going to get turned into something. And now I'm getting pink sweater because this had a purple sweater. So now pink sweater is much more possible. I'm also getting pink hair. I'm going to say blonde. And what's interesting is that just saying blonde, this image will now start to look a lot less Asian in features. A lot of the models are, the main community is Asian. So they tend towards Asian models for reasons. But what's interesting is if you just say black hair, there's like a 50-50 chance it'll be African in descent or Asian in descent. And then if you say blonde hair, it'll automatically be like European or American or something like that. Like the face will automatically change just by putting in that color change, which is interesting. And now we're getting something where, okay, now we've got a pink sweater, and I'm just going to take this image, paste it over here, and now we're getting a. Notice that it's taking this original image, which was low quality, and it's boosting some quality into it because it's getting to reiterate onto it. And the image is better in a lot of ways. And this is where, as an artist, I start to think to myself how easy it is to iterate on a concept now and get reference. Because if you think about it, if what you wanted to draw was a blonde woman with a sweater, this got it. Does it have extra stuff? Yes. Do I still need to keep working on it? Yes. But let's say that I don't like the layout of this. Well, I can just change the layout now with this tool, and now I'm getting a different layout, the different prompt. I can say shops, pedestrians. And now I've got a lot more people in the image. It looks more like a shop or something like that. I can keep going even further. I can pull in more information into this. And then I get something where now, okay, so this was a terrible crop, but it gave me something that I can now crop off of even better for more of the woman in the image, for more of what I might want out of this. And now, this one is the sweater that I wanted. I wanted a sweater. And so if I pull this off, and I work from that, now I'm always working from sweater. And now I'm always working from the prompt I wanted. And now this is where I can start to iterate off of a concept. I'm going to say ribbed. Maybe that'll make sure that the sweater is always ribbed when it renders. She's now got a ponytail. I'm going to say long hair. Now, it hopefully shouldn't give me a ponytail. It might still sometimes, but it shouldn't. It probably won't. But now we've got an image that is generating off of this. Now, do I want to change anything of this? You can change literally whatever you want. And like I said, if I want to generate more of the image, all I have to do is paste this in here, generate again, and now I get more. Now, the way Stable Diffusion works is that the further away from the face the subject is, the harder Stable Diffusion does to generate a good image. If you want a good face, you're going to focus in there, and you're going to be like, bam, and that's going to be a good face. But if you pull this off and generate from here, then you're going to find that this face... This face is going to be worse in a lot of ways because Stable Diffusion is bad at tiny faces. It just is. So when you're working on something like that, the faces will be bad, they will look bad, and that's just a reality of the tool. But that doesn't mean, as an artist, for me, when I'm trying to get reference for something, this means that I can still work with something that's pretty good. Now, this is what has excited me over the last couple of weeks, is the idea of building something that can help me with drawing something that I wouldn't necessarily be able to get good reference from. One of the things that you can do is, let's say action pose. Yeah. Generate, are you going to give me an action pose? Can I get, denim? Okay, we got denim. I'm going to give myself a little bit more space here. All right. I'm going to say redhead. And I'm not getting an action pose. Can I boost that up? I got an idea. Let me boost up my denoise. All right. I got an action pose. Now, again, this sort of starts from the same similar concept that it had before, but now I'm doing something else. Now, what I want to do now is iterate off of this image. So I am going to copy this, and I'm going to, I said, copy this right here. I'm going to take this image, and I'm going to search for a preprocessor that is an open pose preprocessor. I am going to say open pose preprocessor. And then I'm going to take this and I am going to preview this image. Now, this is going to go away when I do this, but that's okay because I saved it over here. When I process this, this is going to give me this pose in a pose, a tool called Open Pose from the control nets. And this now has this pose sort of saved right here. What I can then do is I can use that preprocessor image to add a control net. I'm going to do a control net apply, and I'm going to pull in my positive and my negative. I'm going to pull in a control net called open control net loader called Open Pose. I'm going to use that image, and now this is the positive and negative that I'm going to feed into my K-sampler. And when I do that, this image is back to this pose every time. Every single time. If I then take this and make this a little bit bigger like this, now my open pose should be a little bit smaller and therefore a little bit more manageable in terms of where it is in my layout. I might actually even like that just a little bit smaller. There we go. Okay, now I've got my pose, and my pose is always the same. At this point, if I take all of this away, and I just cue prompt, oh goodness, let me put in some text. That was bad. That was bad. I knew that was going to happen at some point. I am going to put in something in here. Let me put in something in here. One man... jacket, pants, boots, Sunset City. Okay. So now what we've got is this pose is now the image that we are sort of I just realized this is not using this latent image anymore for our size, is it? Oh, that's right. This had gray stuff on it. Right. We're extremely doing that. Let's try this again. All right. Now we get something that... Okay, so how does this work? This works like this. This image is still an image that has some gray, and it might help if I get a closer image to what I think I'm going to get. And what we now have is this image is our starting size and also our starting colors and pixels and all that kind of stuff. And then what we have is this is our pose, and our pose is always being controlled by this image. And now when we make this image, it's starting from this size and from these pixels, but then whenever it tries to make one man, it always comes back to this pose. This pose is the one that's going to constantly be generated. Even though it's actually not fully going by perfectly that pose, it still is mostly that pose. I think it's not fully going by it because I'm not saying action pose anymore, but also because these two things don't have the same size, which could also be an issue. But it is still more or less trying its best to incorporate all of the information I've given it. The text I've given it, the pose I've given it, the starting pixels I've given it, it's trying to do all of that. But I can still manipulate it with the text to do something else. So for instance, right now I've got, I want some red pants. And now I have red all over my image because of the way that colors are handled in prompting, which is kind of annoying. It's really hard to just say you want red one thing. I think sometimes it's useful to do an underscore here. No, that still hasn't done it. So just adding in a color is always going to sort of screw up your your perfect stuff. But we could then try to say like leather jacket, maybe that'll help. Ooh, oh, see, it's got shiny leather. I don't like that. Can we say rough leather jacket? Oh goodness, that made a rough man. Leather jacket isn't working out. Let's do a cyberpunk. All right. Point is, we're getting lots of information in here. We've got lots of ways to control it, and stuff is starting to get out of hand. And that's okay. And the reason is because I'm still learning this tool. So just messing around with this is one of those things that is so easy to do. Just messing around is so easy in Comfyui once you have a basic concept of what's possible. Once you have a basic concept of what's possible and how to generally work around the tool, the possibilities of what you can do become large. You can do a lot of stuff. And I find it to be very cool. Have I been streaming for an hour? I have. I'm probably going to stop this soon. I think that the amount of bad content in this was fine. I'm glad I didn't get more. I'm happy that I only got a little. Because the fact of the matter is, when you're generating images, the possibility of naughty images showing up is not zero. There are certain checkpoints that are never trained on anything naughty, but most of them have some sort of naughtiness in them. Just be aware of that if you ever get into this space. I don't know if I saw anybody ask any actual questions except for what program was this. If anybody has any questions, I know that the concept of live on this is a little wonky. But yeah. I think I'm about done here. I just wanted to go over this and like put it into some sort of form where someone else could see it. Someone else could see the options that are available and the neat things you can do. Because there are some really neat things you can do. Very neat things you can do. Anyways, I think I'm going to cut this off. An hour and 10 minutes, pretty good. To everybody who came by, thanks. I hope somebody finds this useful, perhaps. I hope it doesn't get taken down off of anywhere. I will see some of you later. Bye-bye.